Why remain Catholic inside the Catholic Church during this time of scandal, moral scandal, sexual scandal, even doctrinal scandal? Here with my co-host, Timothy Gordon. And we're answering a question that we've seen dozens of times, maybe up to 100 times if you include Twitter and Facebook, everybody following. And they're seeing the bad news about USCCB, Vigano, Archbishop McCarrick, Pennsylvania grand jury report. It's like we're getting kicked in the guts every week, every month. And people are like, why even stay? Can this be the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church? So this episode right now is our apologetics, why you should stay in the Catholic Church. So you ready, Tim?
Yes, sir.
So I heard it best a couple of years ago. There's a great priest who I love. Many people on YouTube, Catholics on YouTube, also love him, Father Phil Wolf. He's a priest of the Priestly Society of St. Peter. And I heard him in private say this, but I also heard it in the pulpit. And he said, if you're on the ship, so we believe the Catholic Church is the bark of St. Peter. It's the boat. It's like Noah's Ark. That's what Peter calls it in 1 Peter. The church is Noah's Ark. We enter it through baptism. If you're on the ship and the captain and all the officers are drunk and brawling and fighting and confused and off course, the solution is don't jump off the ship. You can disagree with the leadership, but if you jump overboard, you die. So the best thing is to stay aboard and wait it out or become part of the leadership to get the boat back on track. And that kind of sums up the whole thing. Like, if we believe the Catholic Church is what it is, there's no salvation outside the Catholic Church. We can qualify that in a little bit, maybe. We have to stay in. To whom shall we go?
Yeah, the really good news is if you got a drunk
captain,
steerer, captain of the ship, whatever that is, a boat driver,
the steerer, the boat steerer.
if he's a drunkard, it's not the same thing as having a drunk taxi driver. And I like this analogy for a lot of reasons, because there's enough, not that guys like you or I are making excuses for the captains of the bark of Peter. I mean, I don't think we've garnered that reputation thus far, even in just the last couple of months. Far be it for me to say. But the good news is that in the course of a 2,000-year magisterial history, there actually is room. Again, this sounds odd to say. There is a little bit of room to wander about the seas. I mean, you can get lost. Now, navigationally, you're going to have to find the pole star and make your way back. But there is no room on the highway for a drunk cab driver, right? I mean, you're going to die.
Yeah, it ends quickly.
That's why Father Wolf, it ends very quickly and usually very ugly, headlessly often. But Father Wolf draws this analogy, and it's beautiful. I just heard it for the first time right before we started rolling. And it checks out in all the ways that a good analogy does, because literally we have to do exactly what you would have to do on this ship and find the pole star, navigate back on course. That sometimes takes a century. Like after Nicaea, it took a couple centuries. So it takes some time if we're way off course, but we can do it, and it's altogether possible. And like you said, the insanity that results really is the suicidal solution. Well, let me just jump ship, which you and I are seeing a lot. Hey, I'm about to jump ship, guys. I like what you're doing.
Right.
In the comm boxes, we're seeing this, but I've had all I can take. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you realize it's just a big blue. You're running off into the blue.
It's like walking the plank. Like
literally. Yeah.
No one's got a sword to your back. Why would you do that?
Right.
There's sharks down there. I mean, you're not going to make it. You remember in Plato's Republic, I never associated this with the analogy that Father Wolf had about the drunk captain, the ship, and the Catholic Church, but remember in Plato's Republic, Socrates talks about, it's kind of a setup for the Philosopher King later on, but he talks about the man who is a pilot. And, he comes in for the job, and they're like, okay, well, how are you going to steer the ship? He's like, I'm going to look at the stars. All I'm going to do is look up. And like, oh, you're crazy, man. You're going to wreck the ship. That's no way to sail a ship. But that is the way to sail a ship. And the point is the philosopher king, he always looks up to the heavens and he studies the patterns of the heavens. And by understanding the patterns of the heavens, the analogy is the constellations, the stars, Polaris.
Right.
By understanding those patterns, he can take that down to the steering, right, to the ship, and he can guide it safe passage to wherever he wants to go.
Right.
By looking up. It's counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it is in the Catholic Church too. We have to look up and realize that it's Jesus, the King of Kings, who's guiding the church. And by looking up and getting our cues from him, we can get the thing back on track. But I think a lot of people who either go the Sedevacantists route or they leave to Eastern Orthodoxy, Protestantism, another religion, atheism. We're going to talk about some of those options that people take, and we're going to tell you why they're bad options. They're taking their eyes off the stars, off the heavens, and they're looking back at the ship. And they're seeing how crappy the ship is. It's pretty crappy.
Right.
You know?
Right. Smelly.
I mean, every once in a while in church history, it looks kind of like a polished yacht. But most of all, most of the time, it looks pretty rough. It's taking in water. It's not a luxury cruise line.
Yeah. A couple of the first mates have literally become first mates.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not. This isn't the cruise I was promised. Back in Kennebunkport. Yeah. No, exactly. But it's still the best. It's the only game in town.
Only one. It's all we got.
Right. I used to love a great analogy for this is when the late great Justice Antonin Scalia, Nino, was he had a good relationship with University of San Diego School of Law, which is where I went, and I was close with the professors at the Originalism Center there, so I got to meet him a few different times. And he was famous for this expression when he would get heckled by the non-textualists. Why stick with textualism? It's got its challenges, reading the text of the Constitution as ratified. And he would say his response was the same. It was always, this is actually where I'm getting the language. Look, textualism is the only game in town, right? Judicial realism which is one of the many strains of judicial realism is what the opponents were throwing at him. Is just fake. It's inanity. You're jumping into the deep blue and you're just saying that text has no fixed meaning. The only game in town, whether it's perfect or not, is taking text at its original published meaning. That's what when Jesus came, he established one church. And I mean, this is more Catholic Answers line than what we've been hitting home the last couple of months with these podcasts, you and I. But it's absolutely the truth. It's the one true church established by Jesus. It's meant to have both a supernatural wing and a natural wing. The natural wing is teaching. We feel all but abandoned. That's all fair. And so people in our combox on, TaylorMarshall.com are saying, so shouldn't we jump off? And it's like, no, don't ever do that. Right. It's stinky. It's smelly. It's one of the low points now. I think it's the lowest point. I think it's lower than.
You think it's lower than Arianism?
Definitely.
Lower than Reformation?
Definitely. Yeah. Because the Reformation, look, it had a counter-Reformation, which was muscular. It was robust, and it was intended. They had the Council of Trent. I mean, it was bad for the people that left, pray for their souls, that were duped into the heresies of Martin Luther and, Calvin, Zwingli. But it was really bad for them, but it wasn't actually bad for the church. Nicaea and Arianism was truly bad, probably the closest in terms of how, because 4 out of 5 bishops, woke up to find themselves Arianists. But probably like 4 out of 5 bishops now or more are modernists, if we had to guess. But Arianism, I think at the end of the day, a lot comes back to this question of authenticity. Arianism, I believe, was a function of the Hellenized world, the peoples that were infiltrating Rome, the Visigoths, the Vandals, who were polytheists. It was a function of authentic misinterpretation of the gospel. It was not a function of a planned obsolescence, right? And that was hardwired to fail.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think if you look at the political element of the Arian controversy, I don't want to get too off into the weeds here, but there was definitely a political imperial agenda within the Arian and the semi-Arian party, which I think was to make the church subservient to the state, just as if Christ is not fully divine, he's subservient, ontologically. Yeah. Because if you look at the time, the semi-Arians and the Arians, it was all the people, the nobles, the higher ups, everyone in Constantinople was pretty much, and the ritzy upper clergy and hierarchy were advocating Pelagianism, semi-Pelagianism. So I think it wasn't just, maybe initially it was a misunderstanding, but it definitely, I mean, this thing didn't just die easily. It kept coming back because it had strong imperial support, and that imperial support had a agenda against the church. But it's just like right now, we see it the same way. There's clearly an agenda against the church. And what's interesting about our time and the Arian time is the Arian era was also an interior corruption.
That's true.
It was a corruption of the clergy, of the episcopate, of theologians within. We had the Diocletian persecution. Those were pagan Romans killing us. But in the Arian controversy, you have the killing of souls through heresy. And in our time, it's kind of the same way. And, during the Arian controversy, this is all 300s, 400s, the Orthodox and the non-Orthodox, the heretics, were all like blended together.
Absolutely.
Especially for the first 30 to 50 years. Yeah. It was not really clear until people started assembling and demanding statements. Do you subscribe to the creed or not, etc. That the lines of battle began to be drawn, and you're like, he is not a Nicene Orthodox Christian.
Yeah, I don't know
how long. Maybe we need 200 years right now to get there.
Right. That's what I was going to say about, again, I agree with all that 100%, but there seemed to be an authentic, when you look at the councils which follow it, right, like Chalcedon and Constantinople and Constantinople II, Ephesus, they followed immediately in the wake of Nicaea. We didn't plan to do a whole Nicaea thing, but I do think this is key. This is all I meant, because I don't want to be defending the Arianists either. I didn't mean to. There is adjustment there, right? There's adjustment happening where you end up going in the space of about 120 years between Ecumenical Council 1 Nicaea and Ecumenical Council 4, I believe, which is only about 120 years later. I think that's Chalcedon, if I'm not mistaken.
That's the fourth one. Yeah, so we got Nicaea is 325, Constantinople 1's 381, Ephesus is 430, Chalcedon is 451.
Okay, so a space of, just over a century. And look what happened. It's a full, where's my other finger on camera there? It's a full pendulum swing. You go from the idea, I mean, the Trinity is difficult, right? This is one of the most difficult things we believe.
Yes.
A consubstantial Godhead that is three persons but one substance. That is at the core of the difficulty of being a believing Christian. Ask any Jew, right? It's not just the Father, it's the Holy Spirit and the Son as well. So to me, there's a struggle that you witness when you go between those first four councils and you see, okay, Jesus is fully man, not fully God. You get basically is Arianism, people out there that don't know. He has to be more God than man. And the pagans that had been kind of crappily evangelized.
Put that on a t-shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. In the halfway, and we sound familiar.
Like the
in
Goths.
a halfway.
Yeah, the Goths. Yeah.
Like the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the ones that were fluxing in and out of Rome. Constantinople didn't deal with this. After Constantine moved the political empire there, he had stability, but Rome in the West stood, and it constantly had visitors, infiltrators like the Visigoths, who were the ones that were becoming Arianists, at least at the beginning. And look at it, just from their point of view, they're understanding, I get this Jesus thing. The Trinity, very difficult.
Yeah, it's kind of like Odin and Thor.
Yeah, it's like Odin and Thor.
Yeah,
it's like
right,
it's like Zeus and Hercules.
Yeah.
There's a natural pitfall there. And then look, even though, the bishops, I think what you're saying was really insightful at the level of, the bishops, why did they embrace it so much? They weren't the new converts that weren't Jewish, in their understanding of the world first. They did have that Judaic monotheistic understanding. But they went from Jesus as fully man, not fully God, to, in the space of 120 years, a lot of the people were monophysites saying, we get it now. He's fully God, but he's not fully man.
Yeah.
That seems authentic. That seems like they're trying. Whereas what's happening now that's causing all of the faithful to be scandalized one way or another, either like us, and we're like, of course, where else would we go, Lord? We're not jumping off the bark. Or some of the really faithful ones that are saying, what, do I become Eastern Orthodox? They're good, right? They have beautiful liturgies, and they have sacraments, and they have bishops. They're literally reacting to something that's not even honest. It's not even it's a non-problematic. I mean, literally, it's worked for 2,000 years. Don't go to communion unless you're in your soul's in a sanctified state, right? Unless you've gone to confession. Well, that's simple enough. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The bishops and the libs in the church are breaking it in order to fix it. So
what you're saying is, I get what you're saying. You're saying that in previous ages, for example, the Aryan Age, which is horrible, these people were actually, like, if you asked an Arian, do you believe in the 10 Commandments? He'd be like, heck yes, I do.
Right.
Do you believe in all the miracles of the Bible? Yes. They had even though they were wrong, they had a fidelity.
Yes. Yeah.
The modern heretic, ones we've been talking about, the guys who are, in their car together doing same-sex acts in Miami, getting caught by the police, right? And these guys who are named in the grand jury report, et cetera, these guys are they're living a double life. They don't really believe in the 10 Commandments. They don't believe in revealed religion. For them, it's just sort of social work that has a really beautiful myth that attaches to it.
Right. Where they might not even believe in the beauty of the beautiful myth as put forward by Tolkien. I think they're doing sort of leftist work, Saul Alinsky type work, everything we've talked about for the last 2 months. And then they get to have their beautiful frilly garments and do guys on the side. I mean, I think that's what it is for the worst of the infiltrators. Yep. So that's what I meant by authenticity. No, the Arianism was really bad. It really messed up the church for hundreds of years. You're right on all that. I'm just saying, I think that what we have now dwarfs Arianism in terms of the worst crisis in the history of the church because of the lack of supernatural faith by many of the leaders who are milking their station.
Yeah, a year ago I would have said no, Arianism is worse than our current situation, but in the last couple of months, I think we're worse. And the main thing for me is the 3 letters so far of Archbishop Vigano, and then the negative response from the Pope and the cardinals and the archbishops and the conferences of bishops towards Vigano.
Yes.
To me, that's the canary in the mine that says, yeah, this is really bad. The rot goes a lot deeper and further back, and surprisingly globally than I had expected before. Right.
And toss in with that. Well, I mean, it's your thought, so I can't toss in on your thought, but that's where I'm at. Also, the Dubya. I mean, the Dubya were an honest, collegial, brotherly, fraternal attempt to do the job of the College of Cardinals, and it was only 4, some say 5. There's this unnamed Dubya brother, allegedly, that were just in a full fraternal spirit trying to help and do their jobs. and they got totally.
They are totally ignored.
Yeah, still are.
Yeah.
So that stinks of the worst form of motive.
I've heard some people respond on Twitter and in the comments saying, well, the Dubya brothers are just causing trouble in the church. There's one person in particular comment who's always bringing this up. Shout out to you. And they're just trying to cause trouble. The Dubya brothers submitted their Dubya privately to the Pope initially. No one knew about it. This was in 2016. Right. We didn't know about it. It was finally made public after a time period which it had been ignored. And these four cardinals said, the Dubya brothers said, hey, we want people to know that we've actually submitted this Holy Father. We're not getting an answer back.
Right.
It wasn't like Martin Luther going and nailing something to the door at the church. They didn't put out a series of tweets or, buy ad space like Cardinal World does, or put up a web page. They did it discreetly, and they were ignored. And the Dubya, by the way, I think we covered this before, but a Dubya in the church is just a question about an uncertain matter. And
which it's their job to raise.
It's their job to do. All bishops should submit Dubya when there are questions. Hey, I'm not quite sure about this. The famous one that I mentioned, I remember now, that I mentioned was there was a Nordic bishop who was not sure if you could baptize with beer, if it'd be a valid matter. So he wrote the Pope, and he said, this is Middle Ages. He said, hey, in emergency, can beer be a valid means for baptism? Pope said no. Dubya solved.
Right.
What if the Pope never answered?
Right.
You'd have some Viking in a bar fight, and he gets hit on the head with the sword, and he's bleeding out. He's like, baptize me, and someone pours a pint on his head. Well, he's not baptized,
Malt liquor.
Yeah, it doesn't work. So, but the Pope answered it, and we have a record of it. So a Dubya is just any question in the church that's affecting a region or the whole world. You write out a Dubya, send it to the Pope, he gets back to you on it.
Right.
So here we are, what are we, 2 years later? No answer on it. Despite lay people and theologians and bishops asking for it. So, yeah, I think the silence to the Dubya, as you mentioned, Tim, Archbishop Vigano, the scandal with McCarrick, how the scandals in America are not being handled. And we still are waiting in silence with Pope Francis. I will not say one word. We've done a video on every single one of those topics.
Right.
That I mentioned, sometimes more than one. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that Monsignor Charles Pope dropped that line this week.
Yes.
If we're at a timestamp of weaponized ambiguity, we should parse for a second. The failure to respond to Vigano is not weaponized ambiguity. It is a legitimate, in the cheapest sense of the term legitimate, it is a legitimate plea for quiet, please let us go back to business as usual. They actually were sweating that. Whereas the silence with regard to the Dubya and everything that produced the Dubya, the two synod, the apostolic exhortation of Amoris Laetitia, and then the response by Pope Francis to the Argentine bishops, which later got introduced into the CDF, that was all using footnotes.
Yeah.
That was all a game. And even the shadow synod that was going on in between those two synods, that was all the best instance of weaponized ambiguity ever. So just because he didn't respond to those two, and those are the two non-responses, deafening silences of the last 4 years, 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, they don't represent the same motives. In the one case, I think it's safe to say Pope Francis really is just praying that this goes away, and it remains to be seen whether it will just go away. But like you pointed out, I think 3 different times, Dr. Marshall, the Dubya did just pretty much go away, and we shouldn't have let that. So the people out here in our headspace, which are largely your viewers, are having disparate reactions to it. And a common one, too common, is, look, I'm sick of this, right? They didn't respond to the Dubya, didn't respond to Vigano. I'm out. And that's what we're here to say in a kind of reactive way. It was like, okay, we're reading this a lot. That is, I'm 100% certain. I don't say that very often. We admit that we're functioning on well-reasoned, somewhat well-researched, educated probabilism a lot of time. This I'm certain about. Do not jump off the ship. You will drown.
Do not leave the Catholic Church. Well, let's go through the options. Okay. So we got Eastern Orthodoxy. I know one guy who's gone Eastern Orthodox lately, just in the last month over these scandals. A guy I've known for a long time, super smart guy. Super smart. I know another guy who's gone Sedevacantist. And then you can go Protestant. I think, who's that guy? There's two talk show hosts that are Catholic who have since gone Protestant. Their names escape me right now. Do you know what I'm talking about? Anyway.
Secular shows?
Yeah.
No.
In the last few months, I've noticed that as well. So let's
Colbert?
go through. Huh?
No, I don't know. No, Colbert.
So let's do Eastern Orthodoxy first. So, the argument goes like this. Well, the church is getting light on divorce and remarriage, who can receive communion, contraception, life issues. So I'm going to go Eastern Orthodox. But when I hear that, I think to myself, well, I mean, Eastern Orthodox can have divorce and remarriage multiple times.
Well, it's a little stronger than that. They provided the model for Cardinal Casper,
yes,
who spent over the course of 3 decades, starting in the early 80s, trying to translate that model, that Eastern Orthodox model, into Catholic divorce and remarriage, and has all but succeeded, right? So it's, I mean, this is our plea to people that want to leave the Roman Catholic Church for the Eastern Orthodox Church. On the sake of bitter irony alone, or at the behest of, don't do this insanely stupid thing because the joke will be on you. Literally, if you leave because of Amoris Laetitia, which all but, I'm using those two powerful words, creates a Catholic divorce.
With weaponized ambiguity.
With weaponized footnote ambiguity. Yeah. Then, I don't like that either. I've been really upset about that for 3 years. But you're going to the template ideology, right? You're going to the ideology we ripped that from. People need to know that.
Right. Think
twice before you go Rod Dreher on us.
In the Catholic Church, I mean, we're on the ropes, but we're not knocked out.
No.
We've only been fighting this fight over the divorce and remarriage and communion thing for, 2-3 years. Really only a year.
Right.
We're still in round 1, man. We might have taken a few on the chin, but it's not over. So basically, to go to the Eastern Orthodox because of that issue or because of the Dubya, you're basically just lying down on the floor and waiting for the 10 count to declare you knocked out. It's already a given there. Now, other people are going to say, well, we've got all these, we've got homosexuals in the priesthood. You and I, we did a video last week where we looked at scholarship and projections that up to 50% of the priesthood, even the episcopate, is homosexual. Half of those actually being active in that lifestyle. So people look at that and they're like, well, that's scandalous. How can you have a church run by people who are living a double life?
Of course.
And, it's not just that, father drinks a bottle of vodka every week, which is bad as well, or two. But they're living these lives where they're even having relations with seminarians and other priests and male prostitutes, and there's pornography and all this gross stuff. And so there's like, well, Eastern Orthodox, they got married priests, clean over there, I'm out.
Yeah.
Does that fix it?
Is it, first off, before we address that, no, it doesn't fix it. But should you be saying gross about pornography? Isn't that offensive to call pornography gross? I'm just giving you a hard time.
Why did somebody say that?
Someone
in the comments said that was
shouldn't
wrong.
Use the term gross. I love the term gross.
Yeah. Grody.
Yeah, I love grody.
Nasty.
Yeah, it's super grody to yeah. We don't like. I mean, the weird thing is this, and the reason I even made the puerile remark I just made is because it opens the door for what I'm about to say. You got to pick a lane, people. If you're going to critique the messengers of critique, these guys up here, you got to go one way or the other. Like, you can't say it's coming from two different mouths, two different sets of hands typing out the critiques here, of course. But we can't be both overly harsh on the internal operators, malfeasors in the church, and at the same time, being too soft by staying. It's one or the other. So, or it's neither.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, just stay and call it gross. Just stay.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is. I have to be honest. It's such a second nature to me. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, what if it were only 1%? Would you stay for 1%? What about 2%?
Right.
3? Like, at what percentage point does it overwhelm you that you have to leave the church?
Exactly. That's the good game to play.
100%? I mean, that'd be pretty bad. I would be asking 99. Yeah, 99%.
What did our Lord say? Do you think Jesus was joking when the Son of Man returns? Will he find any faith left on earth? He might have meant only 1% of the remnant faithful constitute the remnant faithful. Yeah. Who cares? As long as you're in that. I mean, be a little selfish about this in a theological sense. I mean, all you have to worry about, all the men out there, married men, is getting you and your corpse to heaven and your wife and kids. Yeah. And anyone else that comes in your way, you do the best job you can. But I mean, if you're in a remnant class, what do you really care? As long as you're in the part of the plane that survives the crash, and you try to help people into that part of the plane or whatever. We're not. It's not every dog for himself, but. At the end of the day,
but your moral obligation with your salvation depending on is you, your wife, your kids. Get it done.
Get it done, and help people that come in your way. Try to get them to that part of the plane. But what you're saying is the equivalent of, now we have switched planes, trains to automobiles. Yeah. Is now you're saying, okay, I don't like the fact that really I looked into the future and only 10 people on this plane that ends up crashing it survive, and I happen to be one of those 10, but that's really bad or unfair, so I'm going to jump out of the plane. I don't get it.
It doesn't make sense.
No. So I mean, it's like, dude, just stay the course.
I've heard people say too, like, I can believe in Jesus, but I can't believe in the church or the followers because there's just so many corrupt ones and bad ones and hypocrites,
Gandhi protocol.
Yeah, the Gandhi protocol. I believe in Christ, but I've never met one of his followers. Well, here's the deal. Our Lord Jesus Christ and his 12 apostles, all of them prophesied that false teachers will come in his name.
Right.
So the guy who started the church, started the faith, started the belief system, said, the system that I am creating for your salvation will be corrupted. FYI, don't fall for it.
Right.
So we know that within authentic Christianity, within the true church, there will be corruption. There will be wolves in sheep clothing. He told us all of this.
Right.
It's all foretold. Yeah. So if you say, well, this can't be the church because there's corruptors in it. Well, no, Jesus told us there would be corruptors in it. And part of our salvation, I really believe this, part of my salvation as Taylor Marshall is to fight the corruption. It's part of my vocation.
Right.
Right. Not to run away from it.
That's right. That's good. I like how you say that. It's a guarantee that the true faith will be challenged by an anti-faith, an anti-church.
Yes, and Christ speaks of wolves in sheep's clothing.
Right.
Those shepherds that don't come in through the gate.
Right.
He talks about this. St. Jude talks about in his epistle. St. Peter talks about, Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians. I mean, it's all over the New Testament. Right. There's false prophets. And Christ says in the latter days, there'll be even more false prophets. So, look, people, this doesn't mean that Christianity is not true or Catholicism is not true. In fact, we know it is true because there is this rottenness in the church. We have to fight it. Be manly. Be the Maccabee. Read the book of Maccabees. When the priests corrupted the people and brought in idols and false sacrifices, the godly men came together and took it back.
And there's something there's something counterintuitively surprisingly heartening about the notion that the Catholic Church has all of the crosshairs on it. It's the big bullseye, right?
Right.
For all of these infiltrators, we've been doing all these videos on homosexuals, Marxists, Masons, socialists of all stripe. They understood that as opponents of world religion, qua religion, to go for the big game, right? So
Yes.
that's a good sort of.
Do you think Stalin and his cronies were all in a room one day smoking cigars and like, okay, the Methodists, we got to infiltrate those guys?
No,
that meeting never happened, right? But with the Catholics, did Hitler ever have a meeting where he said, "Man, we've got to get those Wesleyans,
right?
They're going to take us out. We got to." No, but did
the Unitarians? They're going down.
Those Unitarians, man, they are really loving people, man. We got to stop those guys. No, did they try to stop the Catholic Church and infiltrate the Catholic Church and kill Catholic priests? Yes.
Well, and moreover, when the Soviet scientists were standing with the rest of the world and watching Monsignor Lemaitre prove the Big Bang in Einstein's face, face palm, and when they're watching quantum mechanics and when they're watching Mendelian genetics prove the claims of monotheism, specifically the Roman Catholic brand, Stalin wrote it in these terms. The Red Chinese wrote it in these terms, and they proscribed this science because they said this proves not Protestant Christianity correct, because Protestant Christianity always runs from science, which is absurd because science only bulwarks the truths of Christianity. They said this proves the truths of Roman Catholicism correct, right? There's something to anyone with half a brain or more. There's something that ought to be incredibly, incredibly heartening about that.
It reminds me when I was doing my PhD, I had this eminent Jewish philosopher, and we were doing a class on Montesquieu. And every once in a while, this professor would talk about Christianity this, Christianity that. And a student raised his hand and he says, Professor, he's the professor Jewish, when you say Christianity, what do you mean? He's like, what? And he's like, do you mean like Protestant, Catholic? He's like, I mean the real Christianity. He's like, Catholicism. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Historically, when you're talking about 2,000 years of Christianity, you're not referring to the Missouri Synod Lutherans.
For some reason,
or the Presbyterian Church of Scotland. You're referring to the universal one. Okay, so that's orthodoxy. I think that's...
Wait, one more word on orthodoxy that we discussed before. So there's this really, really important question of, we won't get into the minor doctrinal disputes between Eastern Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism, but one of the magisterial points is they acknowledge the Pope as the Bishop of Rome, is the first ranked see patriarchate, but they just didn't think that the Bishop of Rome had the kind of controlling magisterial power that he does, right? And one important Eastern Orthodox thinker, Soloviev, a mystic who wrote The Antichrist, said even in the middle 1800s that he made this important admission that among the 14 autocephalous Orthodox churches, it's basically impossible without this power of the Pope, the patriarchal power overarching the kids, to ever call them together. You can never, and they've never ever been able to have any kind of meeting. We just watched it happen 3 years in a row, where they couldn't get the 14 autocephalous Orthodox churches together because Papa, the Pope, has to be the one to call the sons home. Hey, everyone gather up. We're going to have a family meet.
That's right.
So even people, whether or not we have a good Pope or a bad Pope at the time seems really, really relevant when we've all got our Catholic heads in this Catholic headspace. And it is, we're not deceived. But having a Pope, the office itself, like we say of the president, the Pope, the Congress, the office itself has dignity and function, to be Aristotelian about it. It's the function argument. What does it do? It enables us to have this magisterial authority. Jesus knew it. That's why he founded his church on Peter the Rock. And no matter how bad the leader is, in the Petrine office, it's always necessary. And even the smart Dostoevsky influencing Soloviev acknowledged it in the 1800s. I think it's really important. Good pope, bad pope, medium pope.
Right.
It's important that we have a pope.
Yeah. And look at the Orthodox Church. Have they had an ecumenical council since the schism with Rome? Not one.
Never.
And that's
can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming up on 1,000 years here. They can't do it. They've had 10 centuries to figure it out. They can't do it. They need Papa. They need Rome. So that's Orthodoxy. You know, Protestantism, I think everything we've said also applies to Protestantism. Of course, with like the issues that we're facing, divorce and remarriage. Most mainline denominations already accept the LGBT alphabet soup, you know?
Right.
That's already part of it. Women's ordination, already part of it. So you do have conservative evangelical groups. You have conservative Calvinist Reformed groups. You have conservative Lutherans like the Missouri Synod. You have breakaway Anglican groups, conservative Anglo-Catholic types. But those are very small. It's a minority. I mean, you're really getting into a little bitty community.
But people are going to respond and say, in one of your guys' last videos, you read that the Catholic versus Protestant voter bloc breakdown shakes out much more in a much more ameliorative way for the Protestants, right. Like 63-38.
Yeah,
how does that work?
Protestants vote pro-life better than we do.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and here's the response. I think the long-standing Whiggish connection between Protestantism and what we consider to be right-wing conservative political thought nowadays is well established. It's well established in terms of American Puritanism. So Protestants tend to have a lot of the right political positions, and that's great, and they should genuinely be proud of that. There's no rebuttal on that measure.
No,
but the important thing, we salute them.
Thank you.
I wish Catholics were more like that. They're holding down the line.
Yeah.
There doesn't need to be a rebuttal to everything. They do that well. 63% is, I wish it were higher, but it's a lot better than Roman Catholicism. That's not the question.
Which I think is 47%, right? Most recently.
47 in this last election for Catholicism was 63.
So Protestants have a 20-point lead on us.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a crucial measure of 20%.
Yeah.
But there's the counterintuitive truism that Protestants, because they've repudiated the natural law, they're actually, with all of these nominalistic, 16th, 17th century heresies, really, they have to run from the philosophy and the science, which actually justifies their correct political, I don't want to say leanings, let's say intuitions, right?
Right.
It boils down to, I've struggled with this. So when I wrote my book, Catholic Republic, I struggled with this. Why are they so much better than Catholics politically? We are the one living progenitor of the natural or progeny of the natural law.
Right.
After it's you don't have Stoic, philosophers like Cicero anymore.
No.
So we have it. We're largely liberalized. How are the Protestants so conservative in America and less so in England? It's a real historical curiosity.
I think, having been a Protestant and having been a Episcopalian cleric, I think I have the quick answer to that, and that is conservative Protestants are biblically in tune. If you go to a conservative Protestant congregation, there's a good percentage that have read the entire Bible through at least once. So they have a biblical worldview. They're rooted into it. To the fault of the Catholics, we have an immense education system from kindergarten through college, graduate school, and doctoral programs in the Catholic Church, and we tend to push our people through them, whereas Protestants don't have all that. And our educational systems suck.
Right.
They are hijacked from early 1950s. Parochial schools have been moving in the wrong way. And so, I put
infiltrated.
I put a tweet up that got a ton of traction. And I said, why is it that every time I'm on an airplane or in a conversation with someone who is denying Catholic teaching, they always say, well, you can't be right. Well, you can't be right. I went to Jesuit school for 10 years.
I went K through 12 Catholic school, bro. It's like, and I know. That's what I guess.
Every single time I'm having a conversation with these people, and I'll bring up maybe a Bible verse or a papal document or a council or something like that. They bring up, I went to Catholic school.
Right. That's all they say.
And
that's the whole
everybody
rebuttal.
retweeted that and wrote hundreds of comments because we've all experienced that. So I think part of the problem is we created this awesome machine of education and we ruined it. And so we just corrupted our faithful, our minds. But the Protestants who never built that machine, they've just had this Sola Scriptura biblical mindset. So they just been kind of like eating off the bone. And it's kind of kept them alive. That's what I think it is. That's what I think it is.
No, I that's what I always come down to as well. But because of the fundamental, we should do another show on this, nominalism, right? That inheres at the heart of Sola Scriptura and the 16th, 17th century empiricism that most of these Protestants, whether they liked it or not, were kind of accepting. They are eating off the bone. Sola Scriptura has that one virtue, that it's hard to corrupt the really obvious places in the Bible, right? Even if they're not doing.
They do it in places. Divina. They do it in places.
They do, but for the really obvious, like the Ten Commandments, unless you're a really liberal, like sophist, it's hard to corrupt.
It's hard to corrupt.
But because of their nominalism, because of their Protestantism, because of Sola Scriptura, even, they will always be pitting faith and reason against one another. Yeah. They will always be on the run from science and philosophy. And science is in its heyday. We've got artificial intelligence, right, which makes these discoveries faster and faster, closer and closer together, that is to say. And so you are going to see in the next decade and decades a retreat from Protestantism at a rate which will boggle the minds.
Yeah, I think we're already seeing it.
We're seeing it because the science, because they have staked out the claim that, religion, the Protestant religion, is threatened by philosophy and science. Yeah. And really only in a 21st century with a robust theology can you combat philosophy and science, which is why we need to return to Thomism, which is what we're really trying to do. It's bittersweet
because I think we can move on from here, but because we're both going to agree on this point, I think everybody watching, we believe in faith and reason, science, philosophy, everything integrated with our doctrine and our faith. That's the Catholic viewpoint. If that philosophy and worldview is Thomism, that of Thomas Aquinas, which is really an integration of the church fathers with philosophy and with nature, with reason, everything works. And we're shooting three-pointers all day long. However, when you have these Catholic structures and you take Thomism out and you bring in Hegel and you bring in Nietzsche and you bring in, deconstructionism Kant. And you bring in Kant and you bring in Descartes and you bring everything modern and postmodern. Now, all the Catholics are getting scripture in their liturgy and a bunch of philosophical crap. Right. So they get corrupted faster because we need philosophy, we need science, and we're doing crap philosophy. The Protestant is like, we hate all philosophy. We hate Thomism. We hate Aristotle. We hate all that stuff. We just like the Bible. So when the philosophy goes to crap, they kind of have an insulation. They were never into philosophy at all. And so I think that's why they've been able to endure a little bit.
That's a good.
It's a safety mechanism that they have, but it prevents them, as you say, from flourishing fully with a worldview, with science, with philosophy. So we have all the keys. It's just that we corrupt faster, we rot faster because we're in a warmer environment with all the tools we have.
That's well said. Yep.
Okay, so Orthodoxy, don't jump off the ship for Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy, Protestantism. How about Sedevacantists? Okay, so Sedevacantist says there hasn't been a pope since 1958 when John the 23rd was elected. So 60 years, 6 decades, Jesus Christ has not had a vicar on earth. There has not been a bishop of Rome. They claim there are no living cardinals on earth right now. So how would you elect a pope?
Right. So it's done.
You can't.
Yeah.
And they would say that the ordinations post-Vatican II are invalid. So any man ordained priest, deacon, or bishop is since that change, is no longer a cleric. They're fake priests, fake clerics. So that means that unless there's a guy who was ordained, he's like 80 years old right now. I have to do the math. Like how old, if you were ordained in like 66 and you were 25 and that was 60 years, not quite 60 years. So yeah, you'd be around 80. You'd be around 80. So there's a few real priests, according to them, walking the earth.
Right.
And they have some schismatic lines and some ordinations that you have to travel and go see. But it's I just can't see how you could hold to it.
Well, it's implausible rather than impossible. That's where, and I've made more mainstream Catholics mad by making this argument before, by saying it's not impossible. Whereas being a Protestant is a dead end. Being Eastern Orthodox, even though they do have the sacraments and they do have bishops, is a kind of dead end for the reasons we listed already. And those are reasonably certain. Being Sedevacantist doesn't bear with it the same kind of certainty of dead end. It's just it's completely implausible that even in the time of, let's say, granted for the sake of argument, greatest struggle in the history of the church, that we would be allowed to that the Petrine office would be brought to an end, right?
For 60 years.
Right, but I mean, because of how do you elect another pope without the College of Cardinals?
Yeah. Well, they usually say, to give them credit, in a time of emergency, you can have an emergency election. And then I've asked them, okay, well, who would be the electors? And they say the clergy of Rome. I'm like, well, are there any clergy of Rome? And they're like, well, not currently, there aren't. Okay, well, who's gonna refound the Diocese of Rome and incarnate priests into the Diocese of Rome to then elect? Like, there's just so many contingencies,
moving pieces
that have to happen that it's implausible.
Right.
And also Vatican I says there will be a vicar of Christ, a bishop of Rome, till the end of time. It says that in Vatican I. And they say, well, this is the end of time. Well, we don't know that.
Right.
You know,
no one knows the hour.
So it's just asking for a lot of extreme conjectures. And it also means that the world is without a mass for now decades. Most Catholics are without masses, without the sacrament of confirmation. Just baptisms are going on right now. So it's pretty, I mean, it's kooky. I'm going to say it's kind of kooky.
Well, I mean, I figured you check your guns at the door. You know, if you're claiming to be a Sede, you know you're in the kooky realm right off the bat. But what they're saying, we know we're kooky. I mean, these are people, half of them are actually wearing tinfoil hats, so they don't mind the kooky charge. They say we're kooky, but right. Right. Here's what Dr. Marshall just said reduces to. It's a series of sine qua non conditions, sine qua non claims. You need all 15 of them to be right. Mm-hmm. We haven't actually disproven any of them, and I don't think we should take the time to try, because I don't know if you can disprove any of them. It's like 15. Okay, you have to have this condition A. You have to have condition
John
B.
John the 23rd has to be a Mason. That claim for him to be excommunicate and not eligible to be a pope, according to them, is that he was a Freemason. So that has to be true, but I'm not sure you can prove that Roncalli was a Freemason.
It's not certifiable. Lots of people have looked. I've looked. It's just
so that claim right there has to be, like you said, sine qua non. If it's not there, their argument falls apart.
Right. That's one of the minor
Paul
ones.
the Sixth has to be, and then they even go into the Syri in the conclave in 1958. That has to be true as well. So there's all these things going back to 1958 that have to be verified.
Right.
I don't think they can be.
There's just not a lot of evidence for the Syri stuff. It's interesting as hell.
Right.
Like I love, in a certain mood, I go visit the Syri wiki page and follow the one citation on it, once every 18 months or so. It's just not well cited. Why is it so badly cited, people? I mean, I think that's what we can reduce all of the Sede position to. Guys, why such poor citation?
Yeah.
I'm interested. Novus Ordo watch.
Right.
Cite, baby. You got to cite.
Yeah.
Like, I need to know what you're talking about. And I need to be able to check for myself. What are we always saying? We're like, go look this up for yourself. We're having we're two dudes having a conversation. I write position papers all the time. I cite like crazy. You do too. I mean, we were talking about your dissertation the other night. That's citation. This is a conversation. Go check it for yourself. The citations are out there at everything we're talking about. Anytime there's something minorly sketchy, we're like, now this is less cited. Warning, so take it with a grain of salt. But these people, the Sedis, they have no issue with that. They're like, oh, Siri definitely was elected. And you're like,
not for sure. And then I always want to say, if Cardinal Siri was elected secretly, why did he go on and accept the Novus Ordo Mass and Vatican II and all the subsequent popes? I don't know. It's just wacky, man. I just can't. I've had so many conversations with Sedes on all these points, and it's just asking too much.
It's asking a lot.
Asking too much.
And it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Well, you know what? I'm okay with getting exhausted for the sake of the truth and doing some work, but I like how you said there's like 15 sine qua non contingencies that you have to have checked, and you can't. I don't think you can check them.
And most of them are. And
I also want to say, would God allow us to go 6 decades with no pope? I don't think so. And also, we had Our Lady of Fatima. Wouldn't Our Lady of Fatima said, "Oh, and by the way, this century there's going to be no more popes"? Get ready.
But there's, you know what they say to that.
Well, they're going to say that's what the third
secret 3B is.
Yeah, but why make it a secret that the bad pope had to reveal? I mean, why not just have Our Lady do Miracle of the Sun and be like, hey, papacy shut down, FYI, run for the hills.
That's true.
I think we would need a little prep before you just shut down it's like, no papacy.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're going to have false masses and false sacraments, false papacy, everything. Just be ready for it. I don't know. It's not there. So if there's any Sedes watching and you're not happy with that, I'm sorry. But Tim and I can't go there. Too many boxes to check.
Right. Too many highly, 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 highly unlikely boxes to check.
Yeah.
That's what it reduces to.
All right. So let's get to some solutions, Tim.
Well, can we talk about one last, before solutions, can we talk about the one last flight? Because I'm on the left coast. I'm in La La Land.
One last flight? What do you mean?
One last false new bark
option.
Which people fly. False option.
Is there another one?
Well, it's what I call I'm not being racist. The Eastern option, the Far Orient, right? You see a lot of this in California, from which I'm podcasting. Going to the polytheistic religions, particularly Buddhism.
I see.
Yeah, and there's
we're
one
not too into all that stuff in Texas.
Yeah, no, people are like, what?
Buddha, the fat guy, Buddha.
Yeah, fat dude. I think here's my take on it. I mean, I'm 100 miles from LA, so I'm not that close, but it's a ridiculous option. The idea that polytheism writ large contradicts itself. Anytime I've ever debated an atheist publicly, their first step is to say, there's like 15,000 world religions. You think you have the right one? I say, thank you for asking me. You know how many monotheisms there are, which are the only non-self-contradicting religions which pose God qua God? There are 3. So 1 in 3 is a lot better odds. All of those polytheisms, you just you chunk them right out the door. And I repeat that bit of strong, probably dispositive evidence right now. But here's, I think, what is behind the Eastern flight to the return to Eastern religion, polytheistic religion. I think it's more a sociological thing than you don't see a ton of Catholics doing this, except like Hollywood Catholics types, which is a very rare niche, but it is a real thing that exists out here. They're always the liberal Catholics to begin with. Liberal Catholics will become liberal simpliciter within a generation anyway. But there is a real sociological moment. And people will probably be minorly offended here, but I think it's an important thing. The last 2.5 generations of life in the West so infrequently occasion the idea of an elderly, wise, like white person, someone that looks like us, like they're from the West, that it gives rise to something I call the Miyagi complex, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where the only way that we can even conceive of a wise old person that's lived a damn good life, that's virtuous, that has anything to offer a young person with young person's problems, Daniel's son, right? Is we have to make him look different. He's got to spend his time fixing bicycles and trimming bonsai trees because that's just different. We don't know what that is. He's cool in a totally foreign way.
Yes.
He's almost like, I don't mean this in a racist way, obviously. I love Mr. Miyagi, Pat Morita, but is almost like an alien protector comes down because the East and the West are so different.
Yes. All of our prejudices and preconceptions about religion and whatnot don't apply. This guy's got a blank. Mr. Miyagi's got a blank slate.
He does have a blank slate, and it's cool. And this is why Hollywood types turn to Buddhism, because like you look so fundamentally different. And this grandparent and that grandparent, they just told me to make a lot of money and to get good insurance. Right. I mean, that's literally what, since the Greatest Generation, this is what the Greatest Generation, if you read any serious sociology, the reason they created so many hippies in the worst generation ever, the baby boomers, sorry, I'm always beating up on them, is because they were reacting in the wrong way to bad advice, right? They went the wrong way with regard to bad advice.
The hippies did, you say?
Yeah, the hippies did.
Yeah.
Because the Greatest Generation, they were like doing inexcusable things like, according to the Catholic Church, right? Like bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And these are inexcusable acts, consequentialist acts. And that consequentialism became so synonymous with the American spirit that it just alienated a whole new generation. And instead of saying we need to turn to the cross, we need to turn to the church, we need to turn to the sacraments, they just said
we need to find something new.
We need to find something new,
something non-dad, something non-mom.
Right. And
it's like, you see it's like 1966, 67, where you see the Beatles and they're in India and they're wearing all the Indian garb and they're sitting around with these, what's the right word?
The Mahara. What is that?
Gurus.
Called?
I mean, I guess gurus, but
the sitars.
All of a sudden, like the Beatles albums have all these sitar solos on them and stuff.
About.
Yeah, it's like all the Beatles got spiritually woke, but they're spending retreats in India and saying Hare Krishna. Right.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what a hippie turns to. And Western civilization is now hippie. It is hippie. When they turn back, when Hollywood types are like, I need some religion, this is gross, what's his face just asked me into his personal trailer and that was really gross, Harvey Weinstein.
Right.
Ick.
Yeah, I need to find something noble.
Right. I need to find something noble. It's always the Eastern flight. It's the easiest to debunk because it's polytheistic. It's self-contradicting.
Or non-theistic,
or just flat out non-theistic if we're talking Buddhism, nihilistic. But there is something beautiful there. I think this is right-minded ecumenism. They do have Mr. Miyagi. And we need to return to having old, white Mr. Miyagi.
So I see this. I long for this in Eastern Orthodoxy because I've met Eastern Orthodox bishops and clergy, and their clergy, even though they have a married clergy, do have a Mr. Miyagi-ness to them.
I know what you mean.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Part of it's the beard, I guess, but I don't know.
The beard helps.
Like we have a Romanian parish down the street, and I've gotten to know the priest there and his wife, and I don't know. There's like the way he interacts with his people and with me and the parish and just his whole persona is different than Catholic priests.
Yeah.
It's otherworldly.
Right.
There's something about him,
like cooler,
It's cooler, but also just like, it's not set apart like he's a sacred cow, but I think it's like he has a liturgical function. Like they see him liturgically. I don't think we see our priests liturgically anymore.
Right.
Like, and you see him at you go to divine matins or whatever, or vespers, and he's like chanting and deep, manly voice, leading the congregation, putting up a cloud of smoke of incense. It's like, wow.
He's dope.
He's the dude. That dude's a dude, man. Like, that's kind of cool.
Right.
And it's not like in our churches, we're like, in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Father. Did y'all have a good weekend? Today is the 28th day, Sunday of Ordinary Time, and in the Gospel, we're going to learn about what Jesus, taught us in this parable.
Also, there's a great tray of baked goods at the back of the.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just so pedestrian,
It is pedestrian. Yeah.
It's like a commercial slash David Letterman slash, I don't know. Someone giving away free samples at the grocery store. It's just. So I think in the Eastern Orthodox Church, they kind of have that Mr. Miyagi clerical thing going.
No, that's a good point. I don't know any as well as you sound like you know them, but I totally agree. Right when you said it, I was agreeing. But this is a really important key for interacting with young people. I do it, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I do it with great success. There's something you were just talking about it with the liturgical function of Eastern Orthodox priests. There's something deeply important to your success with dealing with the young people when and where you choose to enculturate. Like, think about, I'm going to go back to Miyagi. Think about even the one time in Karate Kid when he gets kind of
alert. It's getting deep,
getting cinematic.
We need t-shirts that says getting deep.
Yeah.
It's got Mr. Miyagi on it, Ninja Turtles and
Ninja Turtles. Yeah. I can't remember. 310 to Yuma.
Yeah.
No, but this is important. Like when Miyagi's actually asking him about his girlfriend, he goes, "Oh, are you different but same?" And he's like, "No, I think different but different because they're split up." And he actually taught all the other times they get together. He basically just makes him do his chores under the auspices of teaching him karate.
Yeah.
Right. And then he kind of teaches him some like karate, spiritual, open hand stuff, hogwash. Those guys get whipped in MMA, but he's doing all this cool, with the wrong spirituality caveat. He's doing all this cool, deep other stuff. But the one time when he actually gets kind of on all fours with him, and he's like, "What do you actually have going on in your life?" Which is very rare. Daniel's son doesn't have a dad. He's got this single mom. He's seeing him get his butt kicked, like all these different times. He doesn't really get on all fours and be like, "So what the hell's going on in your life, bro?" He doesn't talk that way. He just is kind of like, "I fixed your bike for you. Come paint my fence. Right. And, I'll teach you to be less of a wuss." The one time he does it, it's like really powerful. And it's really powerful, Daniel. I tear up every time I see that part in the movie. And it has that effect even on you. You're like, whoa, he's actually asking him about his life now. That's what you're saying, right? The Catholic priests do this too much. They're literally making the announcements for like, "Oh, these pastries they are soy. We have a soy option." Yeah. And it's like, dude, I don't want to hear you talking about this, man. You got to be a little bit more in the liturgy. They're having everyone clap for the old ladies or whatever. Right. Like
the choir.
You got to, You got to remove yourself. We need a little more clericalism, where you're a little more removed.
It's not clericalism. It's liturgical. It's liturgical identity.
But that's what clericalism.
Yeah, we can't use clericalism. That word is so screwed right now. We cannot touch it again.
Well, we're using it to designate homo stuff. So it's definitely not that. But like, no, it's what I think the Vatican II dinosaurs originally hardwired the term to get around, because they know it's really effective. When you have elders that really strongly command the respect of young people, it's a man thing. It's men. They're like, dude, remember, this is the truth.
Priest comes from presbyteros in Greek. It means old man, elder. Priest means elder.
Right.
He might be 25 years old, but he's an old man. He's an elder. It's kind of like, some people think the tonsure is like just an imposed bald spot. Like, okay, you're an old dude now. You're an elder. You're a bald elder of the people. Act that way. Act with dignity. I think, with Miyagi, he broke down Daniel's son. He broke him down and he made him work for it.
Right.
I think our youth need that.
Oh, of course.
And I know in rabbinical teaching, the masters will hide things from the students. The students will ask about certain passages of the Torah or whatever, and they just won't answer it.
Oh, that you meant like their pencils or whatever.
No. They'll say
Rabbi,
you're not ready for that. I can't tell you that mystery yet. Maybe in a few years. Whereas we're all
Right.
eager to like, give them everything we got.
Right. Right.
Listen to this CD, listen to that. There's this idea that you have to earn it. You got to earn your stripes. And I think young people see that as authentic.
They do. But also, there has to be authenticity of the teacher himself. There has to be respect.
Yeah.
And I mean, so there's authenticity of the teacher and then authenticity of the message. And it's really important. But the message part is easy. It's just like, be direct. Tell them, and I'm not gonna cut any of the frills off. There is a hell. It's super scary.
Right.
I even tell them I was raised in the 80s where, I had teachers basically saying there is no hell, literally saying there is no hell.
Mm-hmm.
It made me basically a high functioning atheist. Church in the 80s was a mess. It still is a mess. But here, let me just save you all of those decades of wandering.
Yeah.
It's all real. It's demonstrably real. The science proves that it's real. The philosophy proves that it's real. Just cut the wandering out and get right to the good stuff. And if they believe you, they'll go right to the spot. The directness, that's what's fun to work with in terms of young people. But they love the directness.
But the directness also needs to have the Miyagi-ness, which is the earning. Like, I'm thinking back to the Gospels, like as you were talking about Mr. Miyagi, I was like, that's kind of like Christ. Like Christ could have downloaded the Catechism of the Catholic Church or the Council of Trent and handed it to the apostles before he ascended. Easily.
Right.
Even when he was teaching, he's teaching in parables, and he's teaching the parables in public, but he's not even telling them all the time what that means. Later on, hey, what was that about? The apostles say to him.
Right.
And he'll say, well, the kingdom of God is like, and and he explains what the fish are, the net, whatever, right? So there's this kind of like that Jewish idea that you don't cast the pearls before swine.
Right.
It's a linear, step-by-step progress. And Miyagi does that to Daniel's son. And maybe in the West, we've kind of lost that kind of pedagogy, and we just want to dump Wikipedia pages on people with all this info. And maybe it needs to be more of a deliberate, step-by-step meritocracy earning of getting to the next level.
With the metaphysics, yes. With the ontology, the heavy stuff, Jesus definitely did the aporeotic. He did the Miyagi. Paint my fence, you'll see that it makes you tough later.
Yeah.
But with the moral teachings, though, he always said, you let your yes mean yes, your no mean no. Just be direct.
Yeah, morals, he was definitely direct.
Right.
Yeah, when it comes to the theology and the mystagogy, he definitely draws it out.
That's right. The Sermon on the Mount is not the easiest stuff to understand.
And the parables.
And the parables, like a mustard seed. In what way? So don't you have actually? This is timely because I know you have upcoming a set of teachings that would be highly helpful here.
Yeah, well, I do the New St. Thomas Institute, so we do courses on like philosophy, theology. We have an apologetics where we go like, what do you say to a Hindu? What do you say to a Buddhist? What do you say to a Mormon? All that kind of stuff. But we found that what a lot of people are asking for is courses, online resources, presentations for young people.
Right.
From like 14, 15 to 23. It's something right now, it's like 81, I think it's up to 81% of people who leave the Catholic Church will leave before 22, 23.
Right.
So we're just bleeding out Catholics right now. It's just like two slit wrists. And all of our young people are just flowing out of the Catholic Church right now. It's horrible. I mean, I showed some graphs last week of decline in the Catholic Church. If you looked on the mass attendance, the sharpest turn in decline are people under 30. So we put together a curriculum of resources, videos. It's just for young people. And it's like, your professor says this about atheism in your freshman course on philosophy. What do you say? Your professor says this on Marxism. What do you say?
That's great.
Your professor says this on the Crusades in your history class. Here's what the Catholics' response is to that. So,
that's great.
It's not open yet. It's basically finished. But if people are interested in that for their child or their grandchild, they can go to, it's called LifePrep, and they can go to CatholicLifePrep.com and get on the waiting list. Just give me your email, and we'll let you know when it's available. Hopefully next week. But yeah, it's called LifePrep, and I hope it's going to be effective, especially in the West, because we found that young people are leaving the Catholic Church for two reasons. One is morally, usually sex, drugs, alcohol. When they're 17, 18, that's pretty much, very common. And then also when they get to college, they're getting slammed with several dozen arguments against Christianity and Catholicism. So we just want to prepare them with those arguments, also prepare them in the moral realm as well. So,
right.
LifePrep, CatholicLifePrep.com. Check it out.
That'd be amazing for freshman year, sophomore year of college.
Exactly. And we have 24/7, 365 day a year support for like Q&A. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really really on point feature.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I know you work with youth a lot too. I mean, what's the? I know you've brought people back to the church and reversions and whatnot, conversions. What do you think when you're talking? I think, man, 16, 17, 18, 19, like that right there, that's where we get them or lose them. I mean, what do you think when you're working with young adults and high school kids?
Directness and humor, a potent combination of directness and humor. And then I show them a lot of these movies that I'm quoting, and I show them what's Catholic in them. But when people will say to me, "Oh, you work with high school kids, isn't that a headache?" I'm like, no, to me, working with middle school kids would be a headache because they're not smart enough yet. They don't have enough happening between the ears to make appeals, but particularly 11th and 12th graders are my favorite to work with. There's some serious desiderata you get in young people. We're used to hearing the kind of scumbag, Freddy Jason movie version of the teenager. There's a lot of that in the culture right now. But even with kids, a lot of kids that have those implications, which is many of them, you have the fervent loyalty, which once you earn, a lot of adults have far less measure of this fervent loyalty, and the passion, right? That most adults, once they get their job, this fizzles out. So the loyalty and the passion, if you have the right kind of personality and you know how to reach them, they have a passion and a loyalty for the messenger and for the message. And the good news is that you don't have to have all these tricks, particularly in an era of pedagogical like wizardry where they're like, do this, do this, do this. All the best teachers
all the
I know.
Group plans and promotions.
All that crap. Yeah. All you have to do is stand up there, give them the way. And again, you don't have to go, yo, what's up, guys? You don't have to do the Protestant youth group thing. You go, today, I'm going to tell you about why hell is real, how we know this, why we know it, and the objections to it, which can seem quite plausible are actually false. And I used to buy them. And then you just run through them and you go give it to them on a whiteboard. I do this with Fatima. They're like in awe. I mean, not because of anything else. I wish they were as interested in everything else. I was open with Fatima, but they're just like, wow, like 70,000 people. And wow, here are pictures. And I'm starting to do this with the relics, like the Shroud of Turin and the tilma from Guadalupe, because they've been so scientifically put through the ringer that they really like that as well.
Yep.
But then you just go through moral theology, show them Aristotle, show them the old pre-Christian, and they're like,
it's surprising. I've taught high school moral theology, and it's surprising that they actually jive with Plato and Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. Kids aren't dumb. Like, yes, their brain isn't fully developed, but it's pretty much developed. And some of these kids will take it in like a sponge.
Right. Particularly when they see like book 8 of the Nicomachean Ethics. It's like, whoa, there are 3 types of friends. There are these 2 accidental types. Like, this is totally true.
Yes.
Like, I have students come every semester. We do this in fall. I only do it with the seniors. Like, literally, I put all my friends into one of these things. I was like, yeah, this is why we study Aristotle. He's the master of those who know, to quote from Dante Alighieri. Everything he says is literally true, almost.
Yeah. Well, almost.
So they're very responsive to that. To me, that they're easier to teach than college students.
No, I've taught college students, and I've taught high school. I've taught 9th through 12, and I've taught college. And
I didn't know that.
And I enjoy teaching 10th, 11th graders the most. More than college. I'll say that the college students, when you get good ones, are super deep and super into it, so they rate higher. But generally, you kind of get, some of them have already washed out by that point once they're 19, 20.
Right.
Is my belief.
It's too
is
late.
what I've seen. Like you can get a group of high school sophomores, and 85% of them are super interested in it. In college, maybe that's down to like 50 to 40%. But you're getting,
that's right.
But your yield, your depth in your impact in those lives are deeper.
Well, so, remember the influence, the dimming influence that mortal sin has on the intellect. Concupiscence, it didn't just happen at the fall; it continues to happen. So, when you get them as sophomore or junior in high school, a lot of them have already been in the. There's more innocence. They've been in the party scene for a staggering amount of years. A lot of times since 8th grade, but that's what I do. I'll usually sit them down and be like, I expect you guys, with the honor students, I expect you guys to stop. And here's why that's wrong. You mortal sin, you get drunk and you do other bodily mortal sins of the flesh at a party, which is pretty much what everyone goes to high school orgiastic parties for. And then you get in an accident and you die, a car accident on the way home.
You go to hell.
You go straight to hell.
Yeah.
And they're all just, I was like, so this is what, I don't really care about the bodily death. What I'm talking about is eternity in hell, like 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000 years,
and then start multiplying that.
Right.
You don't want it, man. You don't want it.
That's really important. And literally, again, these are the people that could later say I was in Catholic school from kindergarten through 12th, and they're like, no one ever told me that. I'm like, this is first communion stuff you should be getting in second grade.
Exactly. So let's say what we can do. We've said where you can't go. Shouldn't become a Sede, shouldn't become Orthodox, Protestant, New Age, Buddhist, whatever. What do you say to somebody who they're in a diocese, they're in a parish, maybe they're in a small town, there's only one Catholic church. It's whack. Music's dumb. The liturgy, there's abuse. There's Eucharistic abuse. The sermons are either nothing or they're maybe heretical. What do we do?
Well, we were talking about the Donatism earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the source is bad, right? The might be a bad priest, but if he is validly ordained, then he can validly consecrate that host. And you get all the same graces from that host, even if it's borderline sacrilege, happening before and after the consecration. So you stick with that if you're that far from another decent, faithful liturgy, you stick with that. You're getting all those cumulative graces, and then you watch. Nowadays, you're in a better position than you would have been 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. You watch podcasts like this, or you go on the internet and you feed yourself. Read good books.
Yeah, get Plato's, get Aristotle, get Augustine's City of God and read it. Get some good Catholic novels. Read those. Get Summa Theologiae, page 1. Read it.
Right.
Get Story of the Soul, Saint Therese of Lisieux. Get in dialogue with the saints. There's all kinds of resources, apps, podcasts, videos, tons of great stuff. I would also challenge people to take it to the next level and be part of the Great Catholic Migration. And of course, if you're an invalid, if you're elderly, if you're in a certain community where you can't go anywhere, like this is where you're at, that's where you're at. But if you're a dad and you're 29 years old and you've got your first 2 kids and you have some job possibilities, move to a better place.
Definitely.
We have dozens of families who have moved to our region just to go to our parish. You've heard how good it is. There's people who move just because there's a really good Catholic school 2 counties away. They actually sell their house and move there. That's not crazy.
Right. No, that's
if you were living in a community and you heard that the water that comes out of your faucet is high in mineral content or poisoned, and you had kids, you would probably move.
Right.
The church is that faucet of theology, of teaching, of grace, and all that. If it's not the best water, there's other places that have better water. Go there.
Right.
Move.
Right.
I think the Eastern Catholic churches are great if you have an Eastern Catholic option nearby. I think if you're near like Institute of Christ the King or Fraternity of St. Peter, like that's where I go. You can get the 1962 Latin Mass. It's not foolproof. Let me tell you, I know of cases of evil, bad priests, double life homosexual priests who are Mr. I'm trad. I only say the Latin Mass. I only say my habit. Evil, evil men who hid behind the trad. So just because you're going trad doesn't mean you've escaped it.
But the rate of occurrence will drop.
Rate of occurrence will drop.
Yeah.
And you'll get men who were formed in the priesthood and in seminary in traditional means.
Yeah.
They've been trained in Latin. They know Thomas Aquinas. They've read the church fathers. You know, they didn't just get Nouvelle Théologie, Karl Rahner and Kung and Balthazar and a bunch of new stuff.
They know there are church fathers. They know that that's a thing.
And they've read them.
That's a start. And they've read them.
And they quote them in their sermons. So you just got to be intentional. You're like, well, what if I have to move and my salary goes down $5,000? Well, I mean, that's something you and your wife need to pray about. You need to talk about. If you're a single person, I think it becomes even easier.
It is. Yeah.
Because you're not having to worry about schools and whatnot, family connections or friends or whatever. So I call it the Great Catholic Migration. It's happening all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
We even had families move from France to our area because they want to be part of this community. I don't know if it's necessarily the Benedict option, but it's taking your faith really seriously and thinking, I have these kids for 18 years. I want them formed properly. Every Sunday, I want them to hear good sermons. When they're in confession, and if they commit certain sins, I want the priest to say the right thing. Not like, no, it's not a sin. Don't worry about it. Don't beat yourself up.
That's the top of the poisons. I mean, that is the most potent of the poisons, which you will hear at a bad church.
And I
confessionals.
I want confirmation to be a real deal and all that stuff. So dads, moms, whoever out there, I think being part of the Great Catholic Migration and moving, it's a real possibility. Consider it.
And it's the only option aside from just. You can sit there, you can go to your bad church and go to your bad liturgy and just know you're getting the graces. That is a real option. Mm-hmm. But if don't be complacent. If an opportunity arises within a couple of years, it really is a real option to move. And it's not a silly thing.
If you were a man and you got a job offer where you're going to make an extra $30,000 at your new place, you would likely sell your house and move.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every guy's going to take that. Well, what if you said, if you go to this parish that's legit, your family's going to get 30% more graces and opportunities to grow in Christ, to grow in the love of Christ.
Right.
You should move.
Go for it.
You should move. Yeah.
You should do it.
It's a real deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a real deal.
It is.
So, hey, thanks for watching, everyone. Housekeeping. Please like this video so other people find it. Please subscribe and hit the bell. That will notify you whenever we have new videos out. Check out Tim's book, Catholic Republic. Check out LifePrep if you have a son or daughter that's between the ages of 14 and 23, or a grandson or granddaughter, godson. Go to catholiclifeprep.com and learn more. Anything else you want to add, Tim?
No.
Don't leave the church. Don't jump off the ship.
Stay with the church.
Even if the captain's drunk, crazy, fighting, whatever, stay in the ship.
We're going to get
to port. We're going to get to port.
Sanctify the ship. That's what we need to do. Clean it.
Take a bucket and start throwing water out.
Right.
Yeah, keep it afloat. Right. So, all right. God bless everyone.
80% of Catholic young people that leave the Catholic Church will do so before the age of 24. That's not a fun statistic, but it's a real statistic. My name is Dr. Taylor Marshall. I'm the founder of the New St. Thomas Institute, and we have found that Catholic young people drift away from the church for two reasons. First off, they enter into moral compromise. Secondly, they are challenged in their Christian beliefs. So we have curated a collection of academic presentations to guide them through these moral situations and to provide solid answers to the intellectual objections that they're going to hear in school. It's called LifePrep. You spent the first 18 years of their lives bringing them to baptism, guiding them through First Communion, and leading them in confirmation, and now for the next big step. Don't let your young person be amongst the 80%. Give them the tools that they need. Join LifePrep today.